Welcome back to Think's course on launching an AI startup in under 28 days. My name is Yanni, one of the growth partners here, and I appreciate you popping in. We're going to cover marketing today, which is one of my absolute favorite approaches and one of my absolute favorite topics. And the reason we have to nail marketing is because it's absolutely pivotal to building a great business. And so, what we're going to talk about today is how do you build a marketing strategy? How do you design a website? And how do you create some content? Like, what might that look like for you? Before we get started, though, it's important to know the source of our credibility. And so, on my side, I'm an entrepreneur with over a decade worth of experience running businesses, founding businesses, investing in businesses, advising for businesses. And also on the Think side of things, having launched or grown around 45 plus different AI startups last year. And so everything that you're going to be getting here is going to be coming almost as a mix of my personal experience as well as the data driven insights we've gathered from all of those launches. So the first thing, just getting started, is let's go ahead and define marketing, right? Because some people think it's about pricing, other think it's about social media followers, and I think as a general concept, it's important to understand what this is. And as a general concept, marketing is going to be three pieces working together. Okay, it's going to be your content, it's going to be your marketing channels, and it's going to be your audience. And marketing is the way that all three of these things work together. Your content might be information about your business, little information packets. You can think of this as like the bare basic unit, little information units. Your marketing channels are going to be the places that you give those little information units to. And so maybe that's a website, maybe that's like a physical mail distribution system. And then your audience is just whoever's at the end of your marketing channels. And so if I post content, the audience is whoever receives that content at the other end. If I send mail, which is a form of content, through a marketing channel, which would be the Federal Express, then it arrives at the audience, aka the end person who is trying to get my mail. And so this is as simple as marketing gets. It's three pieces working together. And if you can understand this, I think just marketing as a general concept is going to be very simple for you. So this is how it works. You make content, you give it to your marketing channels, and then all of a sudden it shows up at your end audience. And this is really it. And then the more content you create, the more you build brand awareness, you nurture your audience, you provide value for them. And eventually you end up turning those strangers into customers. This is the very basic explanation of what marketing is. And so let's talk about how to build a marketing strategy then, right? Because you don't just want to start marketing out of nowhere. You want to make sure that what you're doing is data driven and what you're doing makes some sort of sense. So the first step to building a great marketing strategy is this. You need to understand who the heck your target market is. And typically your target market should have overlap between what this end audience is that you're trying to do. So in other words, if your target market, let's start one step back. If you own a company that owns, let's say, or that sells scrubs, okay, like medical clothing for doctors, your end consumer or your target market is probably going to be like nurses and doctors and a whole bunch of other people. And so get very specific about this. The more specific, the better. Find out where they live and how much money they make and whether they're married or not, whether they're employed, what industries they work with, and like what are their fears and what are their motivations and what keeps them up at night and what are the problems that they face and what are the solutions that they've tried in the past. And if you can get very, very specific on this, you're going to be very much more able to build a product or a service which is genuinely going to be a solution to somebody's real stuff and write in copy that they understand rather than stuff that's just going over their head. So it's important to understand exactly who it is that you're targeting. This is very, very important. You got to get very, very specific about this, but not too specific to the point where that you start to alienate people. The second thing you want to do is, okay, let's say that we are going ahead and selling like medical clothing to people, scrubs that you might see doctors wearing. Second question is where they spend time, right? Where do they spend time? Because we need to know where they hang out so that we can show our marketing messaging to them. And most of the places that people hang out nowadays are either going to be physical or digital. Doctors might be hanging out in a hospital, but they might be driving to work on the freeway and passing a billboard, and they might be on Facebook after work. And so you want to understand where they're spending time because wherever they're spending time is where we know that we have to show up in order to go ahead and display that marketing messaging to them, to inform them of our offer and tell them what it is that we're doing and eventually try to convert them into customers. Once we understand where these people are, okay, so we understand who it is that we're targeting and we understand where they exist, the second step is to pick like one or two or three of those places that these people exist in to set up some sort of presence. And so this is what we call our marketing channels. And so if you think that doctors are driving on the highway and they're always passing a billboard, maybe billboard marketing, traditional marketing is one of the ways that you do it. If you think that doctors are spending a lot of time on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, maybe that's where you're going to go ahead and set up your thing. But as a general concept here, it's important to not set up too many marketing channels to begin with. People spend places in 10, 15, 20 different places. I mean, they spend time all over the place. And the key is for an early stage entrepreneur, somebody that's just getting involved in marketing for their company, you don't want to expand too much, because if you expand into too many different channels, eventually you're going to be trying to put all your resources behind so many different channels that none of them are going to end up converting well. Um, Not only that, but each channel takes time to learn how to use. It takes time to figure out. It takes time to learn like what works and what doesn't, and what converts. And so it's very important in the beginning to pick like one or two or three main channels that your people spend some time on. Master the one and then move to the second one. Master the second one and move to the third. That way you can have enough resource to go ahead and distribute across each one of the things that you're doing. And then again, once each channel is self-sustaining and you kind of crack the code a little bit, then go ahead and move to the second one. So in this case, start with Facebook and then maybe move your way down to Instagram or something else down the road. The last thing you want to do here is, once you figured out who your target market is, once you figured out where they spend time, once you've gone ahead and set up some sort of presence where they spend time, now they got to know about you. And so the way that we're going to teach people about our existence is through content. And this is a really straightforward concept, but we have to go ahead and create content. Again, content can be posts or books or a course just like this one. It could be videos. It could be a brochure. It could be a song. It could be a play. It could be really anything. Can kind of qualify into this concept of content. And so it's really important to go ahead and create content around this. Now, your content you should create should do a couple things. Firstly, it should inform people of your existence. Second of all, it should really position you as a thought leader or a voice of authority. And thirdly, it should actually reach your end target in a way that makes some sort of sense. So let's talk about what might go into some content mix. There's a few different types of content you can create, right? And again, this is not the format of content or the form of content, because again, we can talk about different forms, whether that's a blog post or an article or a video or anything else. We're not talking about the forms of content here. What we're talking about is the type, or in other words, like the material that goes into the content. What is it exactly that the content talks about? And there's three main categories that you can talk about, really. It's going to be educational content, it's going to be lifestyle content, and it's going to be promotional. And so let's run through those and see what that looks like. The first one is educational. What we're doing with educational content, by the way, this would be a great example of educational content, is we are putting content out there to go ahead and educate and position ourselves as a thought leader and as an authority. And what we do when we do that is we create a lot of value for the other people, which builds something called goodwill in your audience. So it's important to go ahead and position yourself as an authority. And especially for businesses that sell to other businesses, you really want to go very heavy on the educational side. It's important. Typically, we see maybe 70% of all the content coming out of a B2B brand going on the educational side of things. The second thing you're going to want to do is mix in a little bit of lifestyle content. So show like a little bit of behind the scenes stuff. Get human about things. If you're a brand and you're sitting there selling things, maybe you have a video of like your fulfillment center, or you packaging boxes or something. That kind of exposes the human aspect a little bit, and kind of lets people get an idea of what it is you're trying to do, but more on a human side rather than just like a brand side. The last type of content you want to cover is going to be your promotional content. And so promotional content is going to be anything that covers like the bare basics of your product or service that you're selling. And the key here is that you don't want to overdo it on the promotional content, because if you do that, you're going to tire out your audience. You're basically going to drain all the goodwill that you possibly had from them. And as a general concept, it's going to bother people. So you don't want to come off as overly salesy. You want to create a lot of value, to the point where maybe at least you have maybe at least 5 or 6 or 7 or even 10 educational and lifestyle posts for every one promotional content that goes out there. So again, you do need some promotional content because people do need to know about your offers and they do need to know about your products. But the key here is to educate your audience, position yourself as an authority, and be able to create a lot of value for them. And when you do that, they're much more receptive to the promotional stuff that you put forward. So let's go ahead and talk about one of your marketing channels. This is going to be the typical one that people use, going to be a web marketing channel, and it's really going to be the one that people start with because everybody needs a website. And so here's what we're going to do right now is just cover like some of the bare basics of what goes into building a website. This way, you kind of know what to look for and have some sort of idea of how to pivot this or how to form a website to be very effective and convert really well. The first thing you need navigation, right? Everybody knows where your navigation is. Gonna be some sort of bars up here, on the top of your website. They're just gonna be your main links, like wherever you want people going, wherever you want people clicking. Maybe it's like your home page, maybe it's like an educational page, maybe it's a contact page, and you don't want more than you need. Keep it wherever you want people going. So in our case, like we have home, we have education, and we have contact. We don't really want people doing much else. So that's where our navigation is gonna come to. On your headline, this should be the first thing that people see. And this is something called above the fold, right? So there's below the fold and above the fold. The above the fold stuff is when you load up a website for the first time, what's actually showing. That's called above the fold. And above the fold will typically come your headline and your subheader and maybe like a call to action or something like a big button. And then below that can come everything else. So your headline is going to come above the fold, and your headline should be very simple. should be your main benefit to consumers. It should be the main benefit of somebody using your product or service. And if it's not, think about repivoting that, because again, people don't care what you do; they care what you do for them. So remember this, and make sure that you get very important with that. Another thing that's important to do is, again, don't sell the features, but like make sure that you're selling the actual benefits. And so we'll get into that in a second as well. The subheader should be, so if the header is like, you know, launch your AI company in 28 days, okay, which is the main benefit that you bring to people. The subheader should be a little bit more information on how you do that. So, you know, we help you refine your idea, we help you build your business plan, implement a marketing strategy, and get your first customers in 28 days or something. That would be a little bit greater of an explanation on what your headline is. And so that should typically be going in your subheader. Then you're also going to want some sort of big button. And so you want some sort of call to action here. That might be a big button, which tells people to book a call or click a thing. It might be an email sign up list where people can put their email in. You can contact them afterwards. But it's some sort of general place that you want to funnel your traffic to. And so in this case, you know, on our website, it's just book a call because we want to see people and we want to book calls with them. Another thing you want to see on your website is you want social proof. Okay. And social proof is just going to be, it's going to refer to the concept of other people using your product or service. That can come in the form of case studies. That can come in the form of reviews. It can come from logos of other companies that you worked with in the past. But it's really important to go ahead and show other people that that other people like what you do, because regardless of what the Bible says, people do want things that other people have, and so it's very important to go ahead and illustrate that. Hey, you're not the first person to get involved in this. There's 30 or 50 or 1,000 other people that had the same exact problem that you did, that we went ahead and solved in this same exact way. And what that's going to do is just help reinforce people and help increase what's called like the perceived likelihood of achievement of a prospect or a client or a new customer going ahead and getting involved with your offer, and then actually achieving the end outcome that you go ahead and promise to them. You also want very high quality images and videos. This is also something that's super important because people fear what they don't understand. So you have to tell them exactly what they're getting into and also provide some very high quality imagery around it so that people can get a good idea of what it is. You know, it's also important to include video content now because video content really converts. And also, unfortunately, with the rise of AI, there's so much, excuse my language, but bot shit that's out there, which is just AI generated crap that right now the way to differentiate that from your text is going to be to go ahead and create video content. And so that's the reason why we do it. Right now, somewhere around 70 something percent of all the stuff that's ranking on the first page of Google has a video associated with it, up from like somewhere around 50% last year. So it's really important to go ahead and do this. Obviously, Google is pushing this forward. And so you're going to want to go ahead and do this if you want to rank and go ahead and get exposure to big people. The last thing you want to do is just make sure that in your copy, when you're writing your website and when you're building all this stuff out, make sure that you're highlighting the benefits to consumers, not the features, right? So the feature of something might be like, you know, organize your calendar like effortlessly, right? Or like automatic like calendar organizing. That's a feature. Like, what is the benefit of that? Think of the benefit as like um, have more time to spend on other things, or like getting a fully optimized day so that you can get more work done. Like that is the feature. And so another way to think about this is selling the vacation, not the plane ticket. So, in other words, when you go ahead and book a flight on Google Flights or Expedia or whatever else, like what they're not doing is saying like, "Hey, why don't you go ahead and like get dragged through security for 2 hours, have to strip naked to get through TSA, have to empty all your damn water bottles out, get on some bumpy flight to eventually land in your destination, and then like they don't tell you any of that. What they tell you is you're going to Hawaii, right? And Hawaii is beautiful. Look at Hawaii. Wow. Well, look at the mountains. Look at the waters. Like, look at the islands. Okay. So, in other words, sell the vacation, not the plane ticket. And that's going to help you get pretty far. Let's talk about social media because social media is another one of the social channels or one of the marketing channels that you might set up. Why would you set it up? Because maybe your audience is there and you want to go ahead and display that content to them in their new place. And so, a couple things to remember on the social media side of things. First one is attention is currency when it comes down to social media. And especially with short form video content, it's really this first 5 seconds that matters most. If the content or if the algorithms see that people engage with the first 5 seconds, they're going to tend to propagate that to other people. If they see that people swipe by it, then obviously that's not going to get propagated. And so the first 5 seconds is really important. So make sure that you actually capture people's attention on what you're doing. Another thing you want to do is test. Okay, you want to test a lot, and the reason you want to test is because we don't know what the heck works. I would like to think I know what works, and maybe I knew what worked yesterday, but markets are always changing. And so it's very important to think about how we can constantly test and not just say, I know what works because this is what's worked in the past, but constantly testing and saying, okay, what is actually working today when we look at the data? What is converting better? What are people actually clicking on? What videos do people enjoy? And what videos do people want to watch? So it's important to constantly test stuff and see what's actually getting the engagement. You also want to optimize for sharing. So on something like an Instagram, one of the key factors that actually contributes to your content being propagated and shown to a lot of different people is whether or not it's shareable. And if the algorithm sees that you're sharing this with people, eventually it will actually go and want to distribute that. Because think about it, if you share it, it's going to get more people on the platform to spend more time there and all the rest. So this is a pretty critical step. Another thing you want to do here is you're going to want to stop the scroll. Okay. So when people are starting to get involved, you want to stop the scroll. And the way you can do this is either through pattern interrupts like snaps, claps, a whole bunch of different things there. You can do it through camera pivots or shakes. You can also do it through like bold text, which is also actually working pretty effectively here. So again, keep this in the first 5 seconds. And as a pro tip, one of the things we actually do is we pretty much record the same video like multiple times over, but we'll record maybe 5 different snippets for the first 5 seconds. We'll upload all of them, and then whichever one ends up doing better, we'll just cut the other 4. And so this is one of the ways that we end up doing that, to actually test content and see what's actually stopping the scroll. One last thing you might want to take advantage of here on the social media side is you want to avoid fake followers. Why do you want to avoid fake followers? After all these big brands have like thousands and thousands and thousands of fake followers. And if you don't believe me, you can just go click on their followers tab and scroll down. You find out that like most people don't have profile pictures, their names don't make sense, or they follow 7,000 people and they only have 2,000 followers. In other words, they're just bots. But the difficulty with going ahead and getting all the bots is, although it appears to the outside that you have all of this social clout, which I guess is important to one extent or another, what it will do on the inside is absolutely destroy your ability to get any sort of insights from your data. It'll basically mean that you somehow have 8,000 people which are watching your things, right? But only 7 or 8 are actually engaging because you only have 7 or 8 real followers. And all of a sudden, your engagement rate is 0, and Instagram's never going to propagate your content. So it's very important to go ahead and probably not go ahead and get a bunch of fake followers. If you do, make sure that they're the absolute minimum amount, so that it's only like 3%, 4%, 5%. Not all followers are created equal, and you really want engaged followers and people that actually are interested in the things that you're selling. So keep in mind that if you do decide to go ahead and get fake followers because you think it's going to make your business look cool, eventually you're not going to know what the heck is going on. You're not going to know what people are engaging with. You're not going to know what content to create in the future, and you're basically going to be trying to convert bots. So don't do it. One last thing we'll touch on here is SEO. And so search engine optimization is pretty straightforward. Again, it's the way that you optimize your website to rank on things like Google or Bing or any other search engine. And the way that we're going to do this is very straightforward. But in order to understand what search engine optimization is, let's first talk about how it works. So I have a website, you have a website, Tom, Dick, and Harry all have websites. And the way that Google finds out, or any other search engine finds out, what your website is about is by sending something called crawlers. They're called search crawlers. And they're little like digital bots that kind of show up on your website and they scan the whole thing and they see what you're writing about and they see like trying to get some sort of idea of what it is that you're about. And what that's called is indexing. So they index it and they keep some information on this. And then what they do is whenever somebody goes ahead and actually creates an inquiry, right? So they type a Google search in and they type a whole bunch of different words. What Google does, or what any search engine does, is it just looks at the words that these people are typing, and then what it looks at is, oh well, what are the most relevant websites to go ahead? Like in other words, where do I see all of these same words? Okay, and then it just matches them and it ranks all your stuff depending on how relevant it is to the search. So in other words, that's why it's important to create a lot of content on your website. The more content you do create, like in the form of blogs and articles and videos and whatnot, the more opportunities you're going to have to rank, which gives you more opportunities for a customer to find you, which gives you more opportunities to make money. Okay, which is important as a business owner because obviously the end goal here is not to run a charity. Okay, so this is the way the search engine optimization works as a general concept. And so the way to go ahead and optimize for that is, again, you want to post content because the more content you post, the more likely you are to get discovered. You also want to build backlinks, which are, in other words, just referring links to your page or your domain. If I had a newspaper write an article about me, and that newspaper had a high credibility or status on Google, which is something called domain authority, and they went ahead and linked my website name in there, right? Or they went ahead and had like Thinkk.com, for example. What that's going to tell Google is that like I'm a pretty reputable source because now this website is pretty reputable and these guys are referencing me, and all of a sudden I'm going to get boosted in the search rankings because of this. You also want to use structured content. So in other words, this is kind of getting a little bit complicated here. Like you have things like different tags. You have H1 tags, which go for your main headers, H2, which go for your subheaders, and so on and so forth. And what these tags do, sometimes they're already embedded like into like website creators like Wix or Squarespace. What they do is they help crawlers understand the context behind your website. So they help the crawlers understand like what's a title, what's a subtitle, what's a paragraph, just so they can kind of get a better idea of how to index things. The last thing you want to do is you want to use data, and you want to use a lot of data when you're doing this because data is going to give you clarity on what you should write about. So, Answer the Public and SEMrush are two different platforms that go ahead and help you quantify some of the searches that go on in Google. If you go to Answer the Public, it'll basically give you the option to go ahead and type in two, three, four, five different words, and it'll let you see what people are talking about and how they're doing it. So, if I typed in startup consulting or AI startups into Answer the Public, what it'll do is give me all the different searches that are related to that. It'll say like, how do I launch an AI startup? When do I launch an AI startup? What sort of AI startup do I launch? And then the goal is you want to create content around that, right? So whatever people are searching, go ahead and just use that as the next big, blog article that you're doing, and write an article about it. And that way, you know what people are searching, and then you're creating content which directly relates to that. And then that's how you get people on your website and eventually convert them to customers. One last thing here, we're just going to touch on traditional media because the video is getting a bit long now in 20 minutes. But obviously, digital marketing is not the only thing that exists. The reason people have gone to digital marketing is because number one, people spend a lot of time on it. But number two, you have really good targeting because these platforms have a lot of data on us. I mean, they really know what we're into and what we're not, and like who we are and where we live and all the rest of these things. So that's why people have gone into digital media, but nonetheless, traditional media still exists. And because so many people are going into digital, where you can kind of track these conversions and really get very hardcore numbers on it, there might actually be an opportunity in traditional. So this would be things like print media. That might be like a magazine or a book. It might be TV advertising. I mean, still a lot of people watch TV, whether you or I do or not. Also, news appearances. I mean, we've had really great success actually just showing up on the news. And it's funny because everybody kind of knows that the news is like BS, but then you show up on it and everybody tells you like congratulations. So it's a very funny like dynamic. You also have billboards, right? Like billboards. I mean, they still exist whether you like it or not. And so when people start moving away from them, those prices go down, and actually mean that you might get some great deals on your marketing there. Also, brochures and other things you can hand out. So this is a little bit on the traditional side, and different forms or different businesses are going to work well in different cases. So, for example, if you have a jewelry company, obviously it's outside the scope of this course, but typically the magazines work pretty well for that. So that is pretty much marketing in a nutshell. I know we covered a lot, and some of this stuff does get confusing. So if you do need additional guidance on setting up a marketing strategy, going ahead and designing your website, figuring out what content to produce, or even having somebody run your marketing strategy, go ahead and get in touch with us at Thinkk.com. You can book a workshop. We'll run through all of this and more in a one-on-one setting. Thank you very, very much for going ahead and chiming in. I really appreciate it. I put a lot of time and effort into making these videos for you guys to go ahead and educate you. And I will also go ahead and include a few other educational content in the description or somewhere around here, so you can continue learning for free at no additional cost to you. Thank you very much for bopping in. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.